What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your election week check-in with pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how's it going, man?
Count the votes. We like counting here.
Yeah, we're recording day after November 3rd, so November 4th, if you do the math, and we're still waiting to find out who is going to win this election. I think regardless of what comes out of it, it seems like polls are just worthless now. Some may argue this fell within polling error, but pretty much everything we're seeing is like they struggled to capture a lot of voices in the country. So just wanted to ask you, Dave, Nate Silver, overrated, underrated, properly rated? Where's he at for you?
Oh, I have no problem with Nate. I actually think they're the ones who give the best context about when things happen. They're talking about how not all areas are actually reflecting any polling there. It seems to be isolated to certain areas, right? So I think they give the most well-rounded analysis at 538. So Nate Silver's cool. I mean, polling's hard these days because it is pretty antiquated, the old way of doing it, and the new ways of doing it are new and thus kind of unproven. So it's challenging.
Yeah, definitely feels like there's going to be maybe a shakeup or hopefully new ways explored for polling because it seems like especially like Latino voices are not necessarily captured. But shout out to Nate Silver. I still respect him, and I still dig 538. Good analysis in my book. So we're going to be talking about a couple of TV shows, a movie you saw, Dave, and some albums today. But before we do, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on youtube.com/nostalgiapod or go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to catch the podcast any way you want to listen. All right, Dave, let's start with Sam Smith.
The exasperation in your voice.
Yeah, it's funny. Sam Smith, now a non-binary person, so using they them pronouns. They're a artist we've talked about on the pod, a decent amount. They come up when we talk about Disclosure, obviously being the vocals for some of their biggest hits. We reviewed their last album. I believe that was 3 years ago now.
Yeah, 17. Yep.
So they're not new to the program in terms of topic, but I struggle to understand where he falls in the lexicon of artists right now, right? Because I feel like they have a big profile, but I'm not sure if their body of work backs up that profile. And in listening to the new album, Love Goes, supposed to be, released back in May, pushed back to June, then pushed back even further because the original name was To Die For, and they didn't want to have an album with the word die in it with COVID going on. Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad that they renamed it. I found myself feeling like Sam Smith excels in two lanes, either slow, sad ballads or upbeat dance EDM music. And in between, the rest just feels very bland and not really catchy. How are you feeling after Love Goes?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the thing with Sam Smith music, at least the music we've gotten, which probably was not what people expected to get after songs like Latch really exploded, about 8 years ago almost. Now it's been a long time. Because, I mean, when this is like that pure vocal driven pop and the lyrics are really about intimacy, and especially on this album, like heartbreak, right? But it's so sanitized and safe, and I feel like just low energy often, which is weird to say because they do have a strong voice. That's kind of been the hallmark, right? I mean, good singing, but songs are often pretty dull to me, pretty boring, which is just disappointing because of the talent that's still very evident. And I think on a song like Diamonds, the second single, kind of just pure dance pop. more traditional dance pop, not something Sam's done a whole lot of. It's been a little more eclectic before, of course, with the two big Disclosure songs. But Diamonds, that song goes. I like that one a lot. That one's fun. But there's very little of that on this, and I have a hard time maintaining my attention, and that just disappoints me. I mean, track 3, another one that's got Guy Lawrence on the keys once again, half of Disclosure, but that's no Latch, that's no Omen, you know. So Sam Smith's career is just, to me, just a kind of wasted potential, despite the fact that they've really successful and popular still.
Yeah, I agree with you on Diamonds, and just the overall take on the album is that it does feel safe in a lot of ways. And I found myself gravitating towards a couple of songs that I thought were pretty strong, but again, it falls into those two lanes, and I don't know how you make a cohesive album when you're jumping from tempo to tempo like that. So the songs I think I really enjoyed the most were um, "Dance Till You Love Someone Else." I really liked the like upbeat poppiness, like pop EDM dance vibe of that one. Um, for the Lover I Lost is just like a great piano ballad, but completely opposite type of song where it's downbeat. It's accompanied by a string section that keeps kind of swelling up in the second half of the song. Kids Again was another song I thought was pretty strong, but again, that like slow, sad, nostalgic type song. But again, it's safe, like you said. So I'm I don't know. I guess I just am trying to like understand or try to think about Sam Smith has he's such a known name, and I am just feeling like you said, how does he reach that potential? And I'm wondering, you know, Disclosure, obviously, we talked about, thrives off of their creativity, their eclecticness, their willingness to get weird. Is Sam Smith ever going to allow himself to get weird? And as he's understanding or at least becoming public about that sexual identity, I want that just like dance queer album that Disclosure is all over and really like pushing him to explore and experiment more. And I'm really hoping we get something like that from him, because if this is going to be who he's going to be, it feels like there's probably a career there, but I just feel like it's not a very interesting one.
Yeah, and to that point about being weird, I think the closest Sam gets on this is it's brief. It's that moment on Love Goes with Labyrinth. Labyrinth, obviously very successful mega producer, and that production from Labyrinth, like those are some kind of out there loops. Those riffs I thought were really cool and interesting, but it's such a fleeting moment that it's hard to latch onto it. I was quite disappointed in My Oasis. Didn't think Sam held up his end of the bargain collaborating with Burna Boy, which is disappointing considering the run Burna is on of late. But yeah, I mean, I guess Sam Smith's just not for me, at least in this current iteration, because he's having a successful career and not doing a lot for me apart from like those obvious like one or two songs every album that are just good. But like album wise, it's very disappointing still.
I guess I'm wondering for you, do you like this album more than the last one we got from him? The Thrill of It All, 2017.
Yeah, I think about them all the same. There's like only a song or two I really like on each one. Like, the obvious hits he's had, Stay With Me, Too Good at Goodbyes, I Know Not the Only One. Like, I like those songs. Those are really good songs. There's the reason they're big. But apart from that, there's only a moment or two on each one. And that's still the case with me, 3 albums in.
Yeah, I do feel like Love Goes is a little bit stronger for me than the Thrill of It All. I'm not sure if I like it more than the highs of In the Lonely Hour, but I do feel like there's more to this that I like. A song I didn't mention that I thought was pretty strong as well was How Do You Sleep. I thought the pre-chorus and the chorus on that was pretty strong. So I do think there's just more I find myself liking, but again, it's not enough for me to feel like this is a good album. So hoping he push or that they push themselves more to um, experiment. You want to jump into Ariana?
Sure.
All right. Well, we've talked about Ariana quite a bit because she be working, dog.
Yes, sir.
Third album in the last 2 years. Sweetener, Thank You Next, now Positions. Um, Positions, not what I expected from Ariana either. Subverting expectations in some ways on this. I felt. I want to kind of give you the floor first because I know Thank You Next was, I believe, on your top 10 albums of the year last year. So big Ari stan right here, Dave. How are you feeling about Positions?
Let down.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not bad, but it's not nearly as inventive and surprising as the last two, which perhaps makes sense given the volume, quantity she's putting out as someone at the top of the game like she is. But it's just kind of lacking those bangers that I come to expect of late, and that's hard for me to get past at the end of the day. There's been some criticism about the lyrics. I think the lyrics are definitely uneven. Depends. There are an album cut or two I do like, but the songs that are positioned to be the big hits, the big singles, some of them are all right, but these don't compare to some of those undeniable hits of the past two albums. So I'm a little let down, but perhaps this is going to mark a true shift in the kind of music she's trying to make. The last two albums were very much a product of the whirlwind of experiences she's had in the public eye, namely with the Manchester bombing and her fraught public relationships. So a lot's been going on, and she seems to still be handling all that very well for a public person. But music-wise, yeah, I'm always a little let down by Positions.
Positions, like you said, is not a bad album. When I say it subverted expectations, this album felt like Ariana wanting to make something sleek, but not bombastic. And when you look at the list of producers on this thing, it's kind of shocking how toned down this is, right? So you have London on the Track, Murder Beats, TB Hits, Anthony Jones. Like, you have some big names here producing this, and you kind of expect to be getting something that feels grand and large. And Ariana, obviously, a small human being with an enormous voice. You're like, okay, we're gonna get those moments, but those big vocal moments almost never come on this, and it feels in a lot of ways like um this was more of a concept album. Like, she's like, the whole vibe of this is horny and sad, right? That's kind of the two emotions that come through most on this. And I still think there's a lot of moments to like, but it just was not at all what I was expecting to get from her. I know you're feeling a little bit let down, but what were the things you thought were well done, or that you did like on this?
I think the hoardiness kind of throughout is very amusing. Pretty funny. I mean, the second track is 34 plus 35. Do the math if you need to.
She literally says at the end, "I want a 69 with you." Oh, yeah. Okay, we get it.
It's like, just give me them babies, and like it's very explicit, very much in the vein of WAP, and definitely fitting at the time. It's fun, and also, given that this is a quarantine album, maybe Ari wasn't getting it as much as she wanted to. I mean, she's social distancing. That's good to hear. People still need to got their needs.
Wear those masks.
But I mean, lyrically, I was a little let down on this just because I felt like there was some songs that almost come across as like fillery. Stuff like Motive featuring Doja Cat, probably going to be positioned as a single, get a video, but I don't think that hook is strong at all. I mean, Shut Up, the first track, it's an intro track, but also didn't do a whole lot for me lyrically. Like there's no breathing, there's no ghosting like the past two albums, you know. Like I don't think of an obvious highlight in that vein. Now there are some deep cuts, right? I think towards the end, My Hair, Nasty, West Side. I think those are some of the best moments. But they're. I feel like those are more like vocal moments versus like songs designed to be big bops. You know, like Off the Table with The Weeknd. It's not Love Me Harder. You know, I think the best feature is probably Ty Dolla $ign and Safety Net. But
yeah, like, I agree. I think Ty Dolla $ign actually really sounds amazing on that track, and they have a good chemistry. But overall, I think all the features were a bit of a letdown. Like that Doja Cat track, Motive, like you said, came across as pretty weak and forgettable, whereas I feel like any other album, if you're getting Doja Cat at this point, you're trying to make something that's either going to be all over TikTok or that is going to be all over radio, TV, something big and loud. And this was just not that. You know, I think I like this a little bit more than you did. I think the toned down R&B trap pop sound really stuck with me, and it just kind of fits more for the type of music I like. You know, you mentioned My Hair. I think that like jazzy R&B slow jam type sound is great. The like clicks in the background for the percussion I thought was really great. Positions I thought was cool with like the plucky guitar. Kind of gave me a little bit of like mid 2000s JT vibes on that. What goes around comes around. I thought 630. I really loved the chorus on that. The "Are you down? What's up?" Like I thought that was so good. I don't know, just really catchy. And then, of course, the last song I'd written down here that I thought was really strong was "Off the Table." The way that they use like the violins and like paired them with synths to like kind of create that like rising and falling sound, I thought really created a strong aesthetic. But it's funny because when I think about these songs, I'm thinking more about the production of them and not so much Ari's vocal performance, I suppose. Now I'm talking it out.
Yeah, similarly, like on Love Language, I really liked what they did with the string production there. And West Side, as I said, it's like more like a vocal display. The use of background vocals, like in parts, it's Ari's vocals again, but they're like dubbed over. I thought that sounded pretty cool. But yeah, Positions, like I said, it may mark just a change because it's less of that hip hop cadence that we got from the past two albums. And I'm curious to see if this marks kind of an evolution because Positions is probably the closest she got on this to a banger of the past 2 years. And of course, it was the lead single with the really good video. Makes sense for that regard. But the rest of the album doesn't kind of almost fit with Positions to me, which is just interesting, So I'm just kind of curious to see really if this is a shift or this is a product of quarantine and it's more of a blip for her, whether you like it or you don't. But I mean, we've gotten 3 albums in 2 years and 2 months, so it's hard to bank on more coming soon. You know, you have to figure her time will be occupied with touring as soon as she's able. So we'll be paying attention. But yeah, this was you're right, definitely subverted. I think it subverted everyone's expectations, whether you liked it or not.
And the thing is, like, I really applaud Ariana for exploring like the grief of her past, and I think that like content and that idea comes across really well in this. And if this is bad Ariana, like it's still good. Like, like if this is her floor, like that's a great floor to have. So I really do. I expect us to be getting some more of those like huge vocal bangers in the future, but have some range, girl. Like maybe you don't need to be making these crazy bombastic albums. Sometimes you can tone it down if that's what you feel you got to do. Explore that grief. Why don't we move on to something that is bombastic though? The Mandalorian, season 2, episode 1, chapter 9, returning to Disney Plus. We got like a 50-minute season opener almost.
Oh, yeah, 54 minutes, longest of this season.
Give it to me.
Our series.
put it right into my veins. Um, you know what I really liked about this episode? There's a lot. I was totally enraptured in this. Like I was just so into this episode. Couldn't wait on Friday morning to wake up and watch. Totally met everything I wanted. All my expectations were very much met. But I got to the end of the episode. I was like, wow, we got very little Baby Yoda in this, and this was still a fucking awesome episode of TV, and it just highlighted to me how much of a well-oiled machine this show is at this point. Because the thing we talked about with season one was it has this overarching plot that's kind of driving things along, but the episodes a lot of times felt like side adventures, side quests, bottle
Procedural,
episodes,
kind of
exactly.
TV.
And it made it so fun to explore all these parts of the Star Wars galaxy and meet all these new people that just kind of pop in and out. You had like Bill Burr coming in for short cameos, one episode cameos. And this show has so much to it that I like, and that's so well done that you can take probably the most famous and well-liked part of the show and kind of sideline it for a whole episode, and it still works out just great. So really impressed. How did you feel about chapter 9?
Oh yeah, so I loved it as well, and I think that's a great point. That's one of the most important points that shows you that Favreau, Filoni, and friends really know what they're doing, and that's because Baby Yoda is a less is more thing. It's a break in case of emergency thing. Obviously, plot-wise, Baby Yoda's ability is very Deus Ex Machina, so it can't be all the time. It'll just lose effectiveness, right?
Right.
And it's also believable that Baby Yoda just doesn't interfere all the time because it's a juvenile being, right? But that was I think an important sign that Baby Yoda is, in this episode you get Baby Yoda looking really cute, hanging out with the speeder bike early on, shutting the floating crib cage when Mando's about to kick some ass, So
yep,
that was enough. You got 2 new GIFs for everyone to use online, but narratively, I like that decision. It's funny now coming to Mandalorian season 2, which luckily was able to complete production right before quarantine, so the show is not really affected by those shutdowns. Really, one of the last shows we're going to get of that ilk. But Star Wars is in a different place just a year later, right? After the rise of Skywalker, Mandalorian is no doubt the crown jewel of the Star Wars franchise, and also the only ongoing thing about it right now. So, I think people are even more invested in it. And also, after the pandemic, Disney is going even harder on Disney Plus, and this is by far the flagship of the streaming service and what reportedly has driven the most subscriptions. So, a lot going into this season. And I mean, to me, you have this episode that is very procedural in nature, traditional, yet it ends and you still kind of get the serial ongoing Mandalorian story to keep you waiting for next week. And more importantly, it's just incredibly well made and entertaining the whole time. And it has lots of cool lore stuff if you're a hardcore fan, but like season 1, you don't need to know that stuff to enjoy the Mandalorian. So to me, this was a total success as a season premiere.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it was like the good, the bad, and the ugly mixed with Jaws, mixed with Star Wars. And to have an episode that kind of encapsulates all of those types of genres and does it succinctly and well. And the attention to detail, I thought, was really impressive on this, right? So one of the behind the scenes things was the sand people, right? They kind of have to come together with the people of this town to defeat this big worm, the sandworm. But they actually brought in a sign language consultant for the sand people to make sure that the made up sign language that they come up with is fairly accurate and makes sense to what someone who doesn't have hearing ability might actually do. Just that sort of thing is so impressive to me and so thoughtful. Just really, I think, highlights how much they're putting into the show to make it inclusive and well made.
Yeah, and I think the Tatooine episode in season 1 was, I think, pretty universally seen as the weakest episode of season 1, and perhaps highlight a potential flaw of the show would be just being unable to avoid the popular trappings of traditional Star Wars, namely going back to Tatooine again and again and again. But going back in this instance made sense because of where that first episode left us off with those, clinking spurs after Mandalorian killed Fennec Shan, that guy he was with, right? And you get that teaser at the end of this premiere episode. We'll get to that in a second. But to me, I was so thrilled to see that Sand People stuff, to see more of the Tusken Raiders, because you don't get a lot of it, but you get kind of a glimpse more into Tusken Raider culture and the fact that they're not just these mindless savages the way they were originally introduced, right? Reminded me a little bit of how Attack of the Clones, suggested, albeit again not super well, but suggested that it's a full culture. And this is something that's actually portrayed really well in the Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic video game, where there's a whole big side quest around the Tusken Raiders. And also in that game was the fact that you kill a Krayt Dragon. And I was just blown away by the fact that they went for the Krayt Dragon on this show. They actually did that. That was really cool. Krayt Dragon, that remember the Easter egg back in New Hope where you see 3PO walking on the dunes, you see the skeleton. That's what we just saw in the flesh. And it was pretty nuts. But like those little moments, right? Like you see the Sand People walking in single file as they pull up to Mos Pelgo. I was like, oh yeah, okay, I see that. Obi-Wan knew. But yeah, and then beforehand, right? Like one of them's sharpening its gaffy stick on the teeth of a bantha, something we haven't seen before. Just little like nods to like fill stuff in. Fucking love it, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so great how it pulls in so many parts of the Star Wars universe and does it in a way that doesn't feel forced or phony or like overdone. Like it just kind of feels natural in the storytelling. And I laughed out loud when Timothy Oliphant came in, because him playing the same role over and over is just so funny. It's kind of like I'm forgetting his name, the guy that was Ted Kennedy in Chappaquiddick.
Jason Clarke.
Yes, Jason Clarke, how he always plays a cuck. Like Timothy Oliphant only plays like a marshal / sheriff character now.
Wisecracks and his
yes,
charismatic. Yeah,
and it's just handsome. Like that's like the whole role. And man, it was such a delight to like get him in this episode. It was cool to see them like interacting, and the way that the show just like pulls in these top-notch actors for an episode, a scene, and fits them in so perfectly. It's such a well-oiled machine at this point. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean that opening scene, which I also liked, where Mando gets the information that leads him back to Tatooine. That one-eyed alien guy he talks to, gets betrayed by, and then leaves for dead. That guy was John Leguizamo, at least voiced by. It wasn't played. It's like those little touches, those little things. The guy who played the weak-way bartender in Mos Pelgo on Tatooine, that was I forget his name, but a co-star with Oliphant on Justified, actually. Yeah, I mean, I think you come into Mandalorian season 2 getting more Emmy nominations for the first season I think anyone actually expected. But in general, just everyone's thinking about the show in a high regard. And like I said, there's a lot riding on the future success of the show for Disney Plus. But one thing that I was a little disappointed by going into the season was that we got some like kind of like quote spoilers in the trades and like reporting. One of those was Oliphant's presence in the show, and casting is fine, right? Like we knew Werner Herzog was cast in season 1, right. But the presence of Boba Fett's armor, or at least Oliphant wearing Mandalorian armor that wasn't his, was like known ahead of time. And that kind of like spoiler detail being kind of rapidly reported on in a mainstream way kind of let me down, because people immediately pieced together, oh, he must be playing Cobb Vanth from the Aftermath novels. Like the hardcore fans kind of piece it together instantly, right? And then we got word that Tamura Morrison is returning to the show, which only can mean a handful of things, right? Of course, who played Jango Fett and Commander Cody in the prequels and is the face of all the clones. So he's what? He's either a surviving clone, which we know of some, but most likely he's Boba Fett, and Boba Fett's back. Like it was like kind of like instantaneous, and I wish that was a secret because the Baby Yoda reveal, something that was not spoiled in any way at all, was one of the best TV moments of
last year.
2019.
Yeah.
And Baby Yoda became like the meme of the year, right? That was something that was so closely guarded and landed in such a way and kind of just blew minds, really, because no one had really entertained the idea of something like that being in the show, especially the first episode. Something as fan servicey and kind of hyped as the confirmation of Boba Fett's survival from the Sarlacc and his continuing presence in the story in the new canon. I wish that had been protected as well. So that kind of disappointed me. But I mean, we really have no idea where the direction of the season is going, despite more leaks and rumors about other characters showing up. So that's still good. I guess they're cutting important stuff. But yeah, I mean, what did you think when you saw Tamura Morrison chilling with a scarred face and a gaffy stick on his back?
I guess because I'm not as,
You didn't recognize him?
well, no, I knew who he was at the end, but I guess because I've been intentionally trying to avoid hearing like casting stuff rumors. Like I knew he was cast, but like I kind of forgotten. So when I saw him, I was like, oh, okay. Like I remembered he's supposed to be in this. I think more than anything, I was like, oh, they're gonna have to come back to Tatooine to like obviously connect with him again in some way. I'm excited to see how they're going to tie him in, what role he's going to play in the season moving forward. If he's going to have an issue with Mando or not. Once he obviously returns the armor to him, it's going to be an interesting dynamic. But overall, I just find myself very intrigued by all the choices that they're making. I agree, though. I do wish some of the stuff wasn't leaking out because, like you said, that Baby Yoda moment was just such a moment, and it seems like this show is going to be covered so closely now that it's going to be hard to get some of those surprises.
I mean, and that like Rosario Dawson may or may not be in this show as the live action debut of Ahsoka.
Yeah,
very hyped thing. Katie Sackhoff might be reprising her voice work role as Bo-Katan, a notable Mandalorian character from Clone Wars and Rebels. Those things are not confirmed, but people seem to be assuming they're real. And despite that, I mean, there's still a whole lot we don't know about what they're going to do, whether those are glorified cameos, if the narrative really is going to shift. Filoni and Favreau and friends have really been saying that this is a bigger season and it's going to feel almost more like Thrones, where the lead protagonist changes episode to episode. I think that's a really cool idea because there's only a handful of people that could take turns as the lead, so it seems like more people are going to be introduced. If you look at that season trailer, there's some cool locale suggestions there. Perhaps Mon Calamari, that'd be really exciting. But we still really don't know too much, so it's hard to complain all that much. But yeah, I think, in terms of demonstrating that you're going to go bigger while still sticking to exactly what you do so well, this premiere really showed that. And that was great.
For you, I know you're a bit more of a bigger Star Wars fan than I am. A lot more aware of like the finer details of the universe. Is there a reported rumor or a suspected plot development that you're most looking forward to, or like a character you're most excited to see?
It has to be Rosario as Ahsoka, and just what that entails. A lot of people are starting to paint connections where Star Wars Rebels leaves off with Ahsoka trying to find the lead of Rebels, Ezra Bridger, who's kind of off in the vast reaches of space, and whether bringing Baby Yoda to Ezra and Ahsoka, what could that mean? Are we going to connect those two things? Maybe will this lead into Dave Filoni's next show that he will show run, right? Rebels is done. Clone Wars was finished with a nice bow earlier this year. Check the review out. But Filoni is going to start show running again. He doesn't show run The Mandalorian. That's Favreau, right? Will The Mandalorian kind of be like a soft prologue to Filoni's new show? And is that new show actually going to be live action now instead of animated? I think that's kind of where all the hardcore people have their heads at. If there's something we can draw, and whether even if we get that in earnest by the end of this season, or if it's another season away, because we know what Cassian Andor Rogue One show and the Obi-Wan show, those are closer to airing than anything Filoni's doing. So
Right.
probably going to be a while. But yeah, that's where I'm at. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Rosario and Ahsoka in this show. Gonna be really cool. Mandalorian, I mean, just excellent TV show, even if you're not as in the Star Wars weeds as Dave is. So check it out and leave your thoughts below if you're watching on our YouTube video. What do you want to see this season? What did you like about season or episode 1 of season 2?
We didn't get Giancarlo yet.
Yeah, I know. And the dark saber. I'm excited to see all of it again. Why don't we talk about another show though that I thought was really strong, and that's Queen's Gambit on Netflix. The Scott Frank and Alan Scott production, adapted off the book of the same name by was it Walter Tevis?
I think so, from 1983.
Wasn't sure if I was going to say that last name right, but Anya Taylor-Joy, who is a rising young actress in the film world and TV world now, plays Beth Harmon, this chess savant, and kind of details the story of her life and her rise to becoming one of the best chess players in the world. And this was a show I wasn't super, looking forward to. It wasn't something I expected to really get much out of. And I was blown away. Totally exceeded my expectations. Anya Taylor-Joy might be getting the season pass soon. Might be on the same Vikander level if she keeps it up.
For me already.
Totally into the show. I see you nodding, so I'm guessing you were enjoying it as well.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the thing. It's I had no idea about this show until the reviews came up. And there's an Anya Taylor-Joy Netflix show. And it's about chess in the 60s? What? Really? Female Bobby Fischer? Fuck yeah, that sounds awesome. And everyone also was like, oh yeah, the show's dope. And I was like, fuck yeah, this is really unexpected. Again, given the quarantine stuff, it's I thought I had a good handle on everything that's left to come out because of production delays. And yet something still snuck up on me. You gotta love peak TV. But yeah, I mean, Anya Taylor-Joy, I'd seen her earlier this year. She was in Emma, one of the last movies I saw in a movie theater before the quarantine. It was really, really good. Thoroughbreds. I think she's absolutely magnetic in that. She made her name obviously with Robert Eggers' debut film, The Witch. So she's compiling a impressive CV for someone in her early 20s. And notably, she was cast in the Mad Max Furiosa prequel by George Miller, and will be in Edgar Wright's upcoming Last Night in Soho. So the train is rolling for Anya Taylor-Joy. If you don't know, get on board now. But I think The Queen's Gambit is a great use of her talents, and really the show, 7 episodes, is a vehicle for her. And I think without Anya's talents, the show might not be nearly as engaging as it is. But you combine her with Scott Frank, and I think it's pretty magical at times.
Yeah, the thing about this show is it makes chess look super cool. And the thing about chess is it's such a game that's about what's going on in your head. You're hardly ever talking out what you're doing or talking out what's happening.
It's very slow.
Right.
Assuming not the greatest thing to observe as a spectator.
Right. And so having this character that is so often doing something that is internal, that is slow, uninteresting, how do you make that interesting? And I think you cast the actress with maybe the most unique face out there. Obviously still an incredibly attractive and beautiful person, but Anya Taylor-Joy has a very unique face, and the way she can use and the way she can use her eyes or suck in her cheeks or clench her jaw to portray how she's feeling, what she's thinking, whether it's when she knows she has someone beat or she's losing a grip on a game and doesn't know how to slow herself down. I just thought that was an incredibly well done performance using those like nonverbal cues by her, and that physical acting, and even beyond that, I think the way that she really portrays this person with a very traumatic past, struggling with substance abuse and addiction, um, looking for any semblance of love and affection, and not really knowing how to like develop these kind of relationships. I think she plays this broken person so well, um, while also having this like very, obviously extremely competent side to her, and this almost like um, neurotic drive to become the best. It was just a really amazing performance by her, superb, you might say. But I also really liked a lot of the bit characters in this. The people that kind of pop in and out. And one that particularly stood out to me was Tommy Brody Sangster, who played Benny. Jojen. Also, the little boy from Love Actually, which is how I'm always going to remember him. Like his face has not changed in the last like 20 years.
I think he's like 30 now, right?
Yeah, and it's amazing because he could play 16 or 30, but at any time Benny came in, I was like, all right, him and Beth have so much chemistry together, like play off each other so well. Those scenes were really riveting.
Yeah.
I also really liked Harry Melling.
Yeah.
Who was like, yeah, who was kind of like evil at the beginning, almost seemed, and then really softened. And I was like, this guy feels like always plays like a dick, and then kind of softened. It was nice to see him get a little bit of range in that character.
Yeah, I mean, shout out Harry Melling, who everyone knows but might not recognize as Dudley Dursley in Harry Potter. But he's actually having quite the character actor run of late. I mean, just this year you had him in The Devil All the Time, and The Old Guard, in addition to The Queen's Gambit, and he was also in Ballad of Buster Scruggs. So good for him. He seems to really be carving out a new role as an adult actor, which is cool. But what happened with Harry Beltic initially when he set up as the local or state champion, I forget, in Kentucky, kind of connects to a few other thoughts I had about the season, because he's set up as this like really cocky, overconfident, perhaps misogynistic chess player. You have the mom set up later on to take advantage of Beth's success and career monetarily. You have this deadbeat dad who's like something off about him. Is he going to be abusive? You have the orphanage where, are they going to treat Beth poorly? Oh, they did give her drugs, but they stopped when they were told to stop, right? There's all these like false flags about so maybe some more conventional cliches you expect to happen. They don't actually happen. So I kind of like that, where they always kind of like turned around when there was like a narrative that might have been kind of familiar and easy to foresee. And the Harry one really stood out. Like, after he beats her, or she beats him, he like has this weird look on his face, and then he just shakes her hand and congratulates her. And I was like, wow, that's not what I expected to happen, because leading up to that, she's getting doubted because she's a female chess player, and it's in the 60s, right? And it's like,
yep.
I kind of liked how it defied that convention for me. Also, it's a really like well realized fictional chess world. There's all these names and past, champions, both on the Soviet side, state side, all these things. And I think what's important about the show, I think this is probably credit to Scott Frank and friends, is they don't like waste their time explaining to you who is who in the chess world and what's a Sicilian defense, what's the Queen's Gambit. They just kind of go with it, because the minutia of the chess is not actually that important to the show, even if it's probably still interesting to learn. And they never got bogged down in that. Also, production-wise, they switched up how they would film and shoot the various chess matches, so it never felt stale.
Right.
Tons of little things that how the Queen's Gambit goes that I was kind of just always really engaged.
Yeah, I thought I was a little bit worried in the first couple episodes, right, when she's this little girl who is sitting in bed, and she can look up at the ceiling while she's tripping off of these tranquilizers, and sees the pieces moving around and can play the games out. And I was like, okay, this seems like a bit like, I don't know, like Rain Man-ish almost in a sense. And are they going to really
savant? Like,
right?
Who she is.
But are they going to lean into this like as like her, like she's like visualizing it all the time. And I actually thought them getting away from that, but then pulling that back near the end when uh, I think it's in the final match when she's playing the Russian and
Yep.
he does a move she doesn't expect, and instead of relying on what she studied, she just kind of looks up and starts seeing this chessboard on the ceiling. I thought that was so well done, and like that didn't allow that to be like played out in a sense, but like also then kind of brought around the beginning of the show and pulling it all together was so.
Yeah, I love how I forgot his name. Borka, I forget the Russian guy she's playing. I love
Borka?
how he like looks up at the ceiling. He's like, "What are you looking at?"
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
no,
kind of like moment of levity because we hadn't had that used yet, you know.
hmm and again, we go back to Anya Taylor-Joy. I mean, this is a total thing for her because you really end up wanting Beth to just turn things around. Like every time she slips back into substance use, you're sad. When she in that final episode when she gets told by the old Russian guy, like, you're maybe the best chess player I ever have met, it's so satisfying. When like all of her like opponents that she slept with are like calling her, like it's totally unrealistic that these guys would all get together and like be calling Russia to like give her these moves, but at the same time you're like, oh, this is so heartwarming and nice. Like, even though parts of it even though parts of it felt a little bit like campy or unrealistic, you still find yourself like totally satisfied and like really enjoying those highs. So
definitely
super impressed with the show.
I mean, speaking of the visuals too, we do jet set around in the story. And I think it always looks really great, especially when like we're in Paris and stuff. But even like when she starts getting some money and like has like more lavish hotel rooms, stuff like that. But also like the wardrobe department just showed the fuck out for this show. She's Beth's wearing new clothes like every scene. And as she gets money, they are fucking fire ass fits, you know?
Yep.
Like that also kind of like really wowed me at the end. I thought her hair, again, always seemed to be curled because that's what we do on TV these days. Still looks good.
I really love how the way that they made her ugly was they just gave her like a bad haircut. And then like the minute she gets a regular haircut, they're like, oh wow, Anya Taylor-Joy is actually a really attractive person. Who knew?
Grown up, Harmon.
Oh god. I think that was the other thing, was I found myself sometimes not sure of her age, because she was playing with so many older people. There was like a point, especially when she started playing in some of the bigger tournaments, where it was like, these people are hitting on her. She's still like 16. Like, how old are we talking here? Obviously something that during that time period was a little bit looser, I'd say. But I do think seeing her like explore her like sexuality also felt quite realistic. Like she has a couple of flings with random guys, and then when she hooks up with Benny, she's like, oh, that's how it's supposed to feel. And it feels very much like, oh, okay, she like had a lot of bad sex and then kind of found someone that knew what they were doing. Like, I felt like that was like one of the most realistic like sex lives I've ever seen in a TV show. Sure. Any other thoughts on this?
The mom's played by Mariel Heller, who's famous for being a director. Didn't even know she acted. But yeah,
she was great.
Like, I was just all ready to fucking hate the mom. I never quite got there because, again, the show kept kind of pulling you back and turning you around and stuff. I always liked how that narrative was used. Just thinking, just the rhythm of the show. It was number one on Netflix for like a whole week. It really seems to have been like a sleeper hit for a lot of people. And shout out chess, man. I played a game of chess recently because of this show. Chess is dope. And I mean, apart from like searching for Bobby Fischer, the Steve Zalian movie, like there's not a lot of chess dramatizations. But again, the cast Anya Taylor-Joy is just kind of it sounds easy on paper, but it's really a masterstroke and reminds me a lot of Florence Pugh 2 years ago on Little Drummer Girl. You have this kind of world-class rising star young actor, and you just give them this great part on TV with talented people around them, and it's going to turn out good.
Yeah, our TV end of year list is going to be tight this year. Going to be tough picks. Definitely. Dave, why don't we wrap up though with a movie? Did you see this in person?
Did not.
Oh, you're watching it through a film festival though, right?
Correct.
It's all virtual.
So I saw Minari
Mhm.
at the Independent Film Festival of Boston. Last year, I attended that in person and got to see Marriage Story early, which was great. It was kind of cool to be in that festival, packed crowd vibe with a bunch of film fans, and like it's a unique energy that I hadn't experienced before. Obviously, with COVID, all film festivals have been listed. LA one's been doing like drive-in things, but everyone usually is just doing kind of virtual stuff. And it was cool that I was able to sign up and see this. Minari was their opening night film, and this is a movie that was at Sundance earlier this year, physically, of course, where it won the Grand Jury Prize and Audience Award for Drama, um, and has been getting a lot of hype as an A24 film produced by A24 and Plan B, and currently sitting at 100% Rotten Tomatoes with 34 reviews. So there's been a lot of hype about Minari. Does not currently have a release date yet, but it's been playing more festivals virtually in the fall. They're gonna really A24 is gonna put it out soon with Oscar hopes, and I'll get into those Oscar hopes. But yeah, so I got to see that virtually. It's kind of interesting to get something and I get the link, and it's like you have 4 hours to watch this. After those 4 hours, fuck you. You paid, doesn't matter. And like that kind of
Wow.
like constraint was interesting. So I just like turned off my phone and watched it on my TV, and it was pretty cool. Um, and most importantly, the movie's really great. And it stars Stephen Yun, who I think people that have been paying attention have realized is like a real one when it comes to acting. I thought he was Oscar worthy in a supporting role in Burning 2 years ago. This is another film in Korean. It's directed by Lee Isaac Chung, a Korean American, which is a semi-autobiographical tale about the immigrant experience in America. And Stephen Yun, who plays Jacob Yi, and his wife, who's a bit of a newcomer in Korea, Han Yi-ri, who plays his wife Monica. They move from California to Arkansas. And Jacob really wants to start a farm and kind of become more independent financially in his life. And he brings his two young kids with him, and that's kind of the story. And it's about, you know, um, coming to grips with your own identity, both within your family, within the world, stuff like assimilation into culture. And it's incredibly captivating the whole time, really heartwarming. Alan Kim, who plays David, the young boy who's at the center of the story, uh, really precocious child performance. Obviously, child performances are often a mixed bag. And listening to Lee Isaac Chung talk about this, Alan Kim was actually the youngest boy to audition for this role, which is kind of remarkable, honestly. But he was really good, and it's an important piece of the story because his character David is like probably like I don't know 8 years old, 10 years old, pretty young, and he has like a heart murmur, and it's like something that kind of is hovering over the story the whole time. And there's the conflict between Jacob and Monica about we moved kind of to this rural area in Arkansas. Hospital's kind of far away now. We have a kid who has a medical condition, and then Jacob is really motivated to make things work for this family, and things get complicated further when they bring Monica's mother, the kid's grandmother, comes over from Korea. It's played by Yoon Yoo Jung, who's a famous actor in Korea who's been in a million things, and she was really great in this. And I would just, I don't want to really spoil what happens, but Will Patton, one of the few like white characters with a lot of lines, he kind of plays this like Pentecostal Christian character who's helping Jacob on the farm. Really, I think measured but effective performance from him. And I would just say that seek out Minari when it's available. It'll probably be on VOD eventually. They'll probably do some limited theater runs first, but again, we don't know the plans yet. But really captivating, I think, heartwarming story, and I think it looks really really awesome, and it's really just all character. And if you've been on Stephen Yun, I think this will make you feel really good. I think he's definitely in the mix, if not getting close to the lock category for Best Actor nomination, which would be very well earned. Really rooting for that. So stay tuned on Minari, but it's definitely worth the hype.
I really love how there's been so many more Asian stories being made into film and that are becoming more aware in the American film industry and consciousness. I think it seems like there's a lot of meat on that bone to explore, and even if the story isn't necessarily much different than something that could happen in the United States, I think the cultural aspects of it seem to really give it a new twist that makes it super interesting and engaging. From everything you're describing, it seems like the character development and exploration in this is top notch.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lee Isaac Chung, this is definitely his highest profile movie today. It was his fourth film, but he notably, very notably, has been tapped to film the live action adaptation of Your Name, which is, of course, the uh, highest grossing anime film of all time from 2016. So we'll be seeing more of Lee Isaac Chung very soon. But yeah, I think Minari, it's A24's jewel, I think, for this award season. And given the year we've had, where there's only a handful of movies, I think a movie like this, which probably will not be very heavily watched, but will be very heavily acclaimed, and the odds are good that we're going to see some nominations for this movie. And that's just because that'll bring even more people to this story, which I think is really effective and heartwarming, whether the immigrant experience is something you've personally experienced or not. So definitely pay attention to Minari when it's available.
Well, I think that's going to do it for that's going to do it for us this week, Dave. What should the people be watching for next week? We'll
We only
listen
have
to.
a little bit coming up as of right now, but like always, subject to change. With the Little Mix album, notably their first album since signing to American record labels. Interesting to see if that means much for the music itself. And also, there's FX on Hulu mini series starting Kate Mara and Nick Robinson's A Teacher, about a teacher having an affair with a student. Starting next week. We'll see what's up with that.
All right. Well, hit that subscribe if you're watching on youtube.com/nostalgiapod, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to catch the podcast any way you want to listen to it. And follow us on Twitter @nostalgiapod. We'll catch you next week. Count the votes.